Well, hello, all you beautiful souls. This is Chrissy Powers, your host of Sure Babe, and this is another episode. And I'm so happy that you guys are here today. I have a wonderful episode with Julia Edelstein. She is the new editor-in-chief at Parents Magazine. And it kind of felt full circle for me because my very first job out of college was at Parenting Magazine. Parenting is no longer, but Parents Magazine has just weathered all of the digital boom crises and all of that stuff because it really is a forefront leader of parenting in the magazine print industry, and I absolutely love it. So it was such an honor to interview Julia Edelstein and talk about how she got to where she's at, and how she started writing and where she's at today and how she handles the stress of running such a huge magazine that's highly influential, as well as being the mother that she wants to be to her two boys at home. So yeah, hopefully you guys get a lot out of this episode. Thank you so much for listening, and without further ado, here's Julia. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Sure Babe. Okay, today I have an amazing interviewee. I have Julia Edelstein on the show. She is the new editor-in-chief at Parents Magazine. Welcome to the show, Julia.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to chat with you today.
Yes, I'm so happy for the Sure Babe listeners to hear your voice because you are very much a millennial mom working in New York City and balancing and juggling all that life has to offer you as a mom of two small boys, 5 and 2.
Yeah.
And okay, so today I'm excited to just pick your brain about how you do what you do, how you have a career, how you juggle like life and motherhood and all of that stuff, and just other mom truths that I feel like we need to like pull back the veil on because if you haven't already listened to the show, is really about just being open and honest. So let's get into it. Why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself and how you got into the publishing world and ended up in this now new leadership role at Parents Magazine?
Sure. Yeah. Well, my life in publishing started a long time ago. I think I always knew I wanted to be a writer from a very young age, maybe fifth grade. I remember writing book reports and feeling like I just loved writing it more than the other kids in the class might have, and that it was a calling and that I needed to follow that in some form. And so, I was editor in chief of my high school newspaper, and I was on the newspaper in college. And I actually co-founded a magazine in college. It was a weekly arts and news magazine. And so then I kind of naturally, right out of college, stepped into a job as an editorial assistant. It was at a magazine that I had interned at.
Okay.
And I would say, for me, I spent college like networking and really gaining the skills of these student publications. That's where I really learned how to write and edit. So that when I started at an entry level job, I already knew a lot. And so I was able to kind of impress my editors from the get-go. So, I would say taking every opportunity to learn and following my passion and not really doubting it, like just sort of knowing from a young age, I love to write and pursuing that has worked out for me, I guess.
That's amazing. Did you ever encounter roadblock? I mean, I'm sure you have, but like, what are some of those roadblocks you had to overcome in following your passion? Because I truly believe that once you find that passion and then you're like, okay, like I know I'm going to educate myself in this, I'm going to put myself out there. But all of us come up to like certain roadblocks that sometimes keep us from pursuing that passion. Did you come up to any that you had to like overcome?
Yeah, I mean, I'm in media, and whether you're in print media, digital media, podcasting, TV, it's always been a very unstable environment. It's constantly changing and expanding. And there have definitely been moments when I've been surrounded by negativity, or, I started working in 2007. That was when I graduated college. And then in 2008, the economy basically collapsed. And there was a solid period there where where I wasn't sure if I should stay in the industry. Like, should I go do something more stable? And I, had a lot of friends who left the industry. And ultimately, I just decided, like, I'm not going to leave the thing I love to do. As long as I can still love doing this, I'm going to keep doing it.
Oh, I love that.
So, so those, and then there were definitely periods of my career where I just sort of didn't move up, couldn't really make headway in gaining new skills. And I always somehow found a way around it, whether it was, okay, that means it's time to go work somewhere else, or just advocating for myself, always with like the interest of the publication in mind. I think that's really key is, if you just go into someone's office and you say, I want a promotion, but you're not really offering something to the brand or to the title. It's not going to go anywhere, but making yourself indispensable and having a lot of ideas for how you can move the brand forward. That's always been like what's helped me.
That is gold. I think so many people listening right now need to write that down, because if you want that raise and you're deserving of it, but you need to know, like, okay, well, how does everybody else benefit from that? And the truth is that they probably will if that's your calling, because you are offering so much more when you're when you're given more, I believe. So that's amazing. Thank you for sharing that.
Oh yeah.
So how did that lead you to Parents Magazine? I'm so curious to know, like, how, all along the way, how you got here.
Yeah. Well, I've always loved, the thing that I've known probably before I knew I wanted to be a writer was that I wanted to be a mother. I was, one of those little girls who was playing with dolls and who I had these little cousins, these babies, and I was, like 7 or 8, and I just loved babies, and I always knew I wanted to be a mom. And so when I graduated from college, my first job was at a magazine called Time Out New York Kids, and it was like this very irreverent, kind of fun magazine for New York City parents. And I think a lot of 23-year-olds would not be interested in entering into the parenting space necessarily, but I was, because I love children. And I've also always found there to be something so pure and so important about parenting content. I just feel you just feel great about it when you provide the piece of advice that might be a game changer for somebody's evenings, or for the way they view their family, or for the way they understand their kid. I really think raising our children is the most important thing we'll do in life. Our careers are one thing, but once you have a child, like, that kind of supersedes everything. So I've always just been passionate about that space. So I was, through the recession, I was at Time at New York Kids, and that was a small local magazine. And I actually remember when I was there thinking, like, how am I ever going to get out of this small niche space? And then I wound up, one of my former bosses there had moved to Real Simple magazine. And she, alerted me to an opportunity there and advocated for me. And it was a whole long process, but I jumped over to Real Simple. And so, but even at Real Simple, and then I was at Good Housekeeping, I always had a hand in the family space, because I loved parenting. So I really became a health editor, but would also work on the family parenting pages. And then I became a mom, and it just was really clear that, like, that was really my dream job. Like, when what you're working on is a marriage with your personal life, it can be a lot. Sometimes you actually need to find an escape, because I find I'm so interested in parenting, and I'm working on it all day, and then I'm with my kids, and then, when it comes time to, like, zone out watching TV, I have to almost remind myself, like, don't watch, like, Working Moms or Parenthood or something, because, I need an escape. Like, I have to watch The Crown, because it can be almost overwhelming, but I do feel really lucky to work in a space that is so relevant to my life.
I think that's amazing. Which is funny. Interestingly enough, my first job out of college was at Parenting Magazine.
Oh, okay.
I worked in San Francisco at Time Incorporated, so I knew all the people from Real Simple as well. I was on the other side. I was on the ad sales side, thinking that would lead me to the creative editorial side, but it didn't, which incidentally, it was just like part of my path, and I learned so much. But I remember, like, looking at these magazines, and I was a young 23-year-old, probably 22, 23. And I was like, I know I'm going to be a mom someday. And, like, I would look at these, like, beautiful magazines and I read Parents all the time, of course. Um, and I
Yeah.
had like the most intense baby fever as like a 22
Yes.
year old. So yeah, it was really funny, but that's my link
Yeah.
to you guys. But so
I definitely had baby fever when I was like 23 working at that magazine. We would have
yes,
babies in for cover
what could you
shoots
not?
and
It's insane.
yeah. Yeah. And what's funny though is that I remember when I was 23 and I was working for this parenting magazine that like my secret weapon was I was the youngest one there and I had the strongest memories of my childhood. Like I could more get into the space of what it was like to be a
Yeah.
kid. So I remember just being like picking out things for a gift guide or doing a story about kids and technology or what Broadway shows you should take your kid to and feeling like I could still remember what the magic of going to a Broadway show as a kid. And now obviously I'm so deep in the parent space and that feels a little further away.
Mhm. I could pick your brain now so much about like the different types of parenting, but like, do you do you follow like Dr. Shefali or like who are the people that you look up to in terms of their parenting styles?
Oh, that's a good question. You know, we have so much parenting advice in the
Mhm.
magazine. um, and I love the work of some of our advisors, and I find that it applies sometimes like some of the most interesting things, some of the most interesting advice is for an older child, but it applies to a young child. Some things I've read recently, I love Tova Klein. She wrote, now I'm blanking on the name of her book. I'm gonna Google it. I've read her book, and now, of course, I'm forgetting. Oh, How Toddlers
Oh,
Thrive.
read that
Um,
book.
yeah, yeah. And I think it's, the thing is, every kid is different. And when you're reading these books before you have your child, it feels like, oh, I can do this. Like, this will be how I
Yeah.
parent. But I think she just has like a wonderful philosophy about parenting. And I remember she gave the one piece of advice was just about the schedule, which is basically like wake up, go outside, come back for lunch, nap. Like that going outside is a huge part of her philosophy with kids. And it's sort of the key, I think, to not losing your mind as a parent, because when you're trapped at home
Yeah.
with your kids, it can just feel so isolating, so boring. Your kids drive you crazy. You feel guilty. But something about going outdoors into a park or into your backyard, even, just totally flips a switch. Um, so I like her. I love that book. We just added to our advisory board Lisa Damore, who's a big parenting writer, and I think she has some very smart things to say about raising kids, especially girls. But honestly, much of it applies to boys as well. I'm trying to think who else. Who else have I read?
Those are
Yeah. But I mean, honestly, our magazine, like
yeah.
I read all day is our magazine and proposals by writers. We're working with a psychologist who I know personally, Rebecca Hirschberg, who wrote the Tantrum Survival Guide. And she just has she's a mom too. She has little kids and
Yeah.
she has really
So basically you
practical
can find it all in the
tips.
magazine on how to survive
Yeah.
tantrums. I think I need that too. Um,
Yeah.
okay, so let's talk a little bit about how do you take or how do you go from being in probably a stressful environment, as all work environments can be at times, meeting deadlines and just trying to be on it. How do you move from that space to then being at home with your family and your boys? Like, because I often find I have to reset a lot because I work from home, so that probably doesn't help.
Mm.
But oftentimes, I'm always explaining stress to my kids, and I'm like, "Mommy is just stressed right now, and I'm so sorry I snapped at you." But then I'm like, I don't even want to have to do that anymore. I need to get better at not allowing the stress to overcome me that then becomes, the mother or how I'm mothering. So how do you do that?
I'm definitely a work in progress in that area as well. I think I used to be better about it when I had one child and my job was not as stressful. And I remember very purposefully coming home when I first became a mom and putting my phone away. And I just had this beautiful one little baby. And I would take time and we'd put on music and we would dance every day after work. And I would kind of get into this really calm mindset of just focusing on him. And so we would do that, and then I would give him dinner and bath and bed, and it was nice. But as my life has gotten much more complicated, as I had 2 kids, as my career has taken off, and my job has become much more stressful, my commute has increased, my husband's work has gotten more intense. Those days are sort of behind me, and that was kind of like a year-long dream in a sense. And I definitely struggle to get my head in the game and calm down and not be thinking of a million things. It's not just work, it's that when work is really intense and fills up every second of the time that you're at work, you get home, and instead of the joy of your kids, I'm sort of flooded with the to-dos of everything that has to happen now at home, or the one email I didn't send, or how am I going to get these kids to bed so that I can do a little more work, or I can send these emails. What I found helps is, especially since I, got this job, I've only been in this role for 6 weeks, and I immediately had to increase my childcare. It's not that I'm working like so many more hours during the day, but the stress level is higher, and I don't want to put myself into stressful situations that I can avoid at home. So, for example, if my husband is going to be working late and I'm going to have had a really stressful day at work where I've been meeting with clients, and I've been running meetings, and I've been giving presentations, and I've been working against deadlines, and then to come home and have to face the entire evening routine alone is a lot, And so I'll ask my babysitter to stay an extra hour to help me get one of the kids down. And I find that helps me feel like a little less panicked, because like I'll kind of go to a place of panic if my kids are giving me a really hard time, and I'm already at like a 75% anxiety level. And so it doesn't take much to go to 100. So I try to equip myself with the resources I need to avoid hitting the ceiling. So that's something I've kind of done recently, is increased a little bit of childcare. I think date nights are a big thing, just for sort of self-care and for remembering that you're a person. And, so getting like the babysitter on a Saturday night and just having something low key, like going out for a bite, or, last weekend, my husband and I just like got a bite locally and went to Barnes and Noble and walked around, and it was sedate, but it was at least like just a moment that wasn't about the kids and it wasn't about work. It was just about us being human beings. And then instead of like flipping out at my kids, which I'm not saying I never do, but I'll try to remember like that there are alternatives, including even turning on the TV in a, that's not my go-to, but rather than like losing my temper, if my kid is having a total tantrum and I've just lost it, I'll be like, all right, let's take a pause. Like, let's watch a show for 20 minutes together. Let's cuddle on the couch, and just unwind. And, for me, it's always around bedtime that I lose my temper. Like, I'm pretty good in the morning. I have a lot of reserves, but by the end of the day, I just don't have much left. So, it's taking like 5 minutes in my bedroom and reminding myself like they are going to fall asleep. Like at some point you will have some time. And then I try to use the time I have strategically. If the thing that's really stressing me out is a huge work project or something I have to get done in my home life, then I'm the kind of person who getting that done will actually help having it hanging over me. So like I may do that, and then I may take a bath for 15 minutes to de-stress and go to bed. So I try to actually just enjoy that time alone. I think that helps. But like you said, I know you apologize. I do that too. And I think that's important. Like I'm never going to be, it's actually the same philosophy that there's around tantrums. Like your kids are never going to have zero tantrums. Tantrums are normal. And I think for parents too, you're never going to be completely serene. You're never going to get to a point of never yelling at your children or losing your temper with them. And it's so important to just to apologize when it happens, but to forgive yourself too. I don't beat myself up about it. I just say tomorrow's another day and I'll try again tomorrow.
I like that philosophy. And my follow-up question was about self-care and how you take care of yourself in, when the kids go to bed or on those date nights and things like that. So that's really good. Is there anything else that you do like for mental health?
Oh yeah. I mean, I definitely go to therapy.
Oh, good. Yes, me too.
I mean, I think that's so important. People really need to be more open about it. In New York, where I live, like people are pretty open about it.
Yeah.
But I just think it's, I come from you don't get to a job like the one I'm in without having this very productive kind of personality where,
Mm-hmm.
I kind of just put my head down and achieve and just get things done. And I remember somebody saying to me well before I had kids, like, well, that's an okay strategy for right now. But like, when you have kids, like, that's not going to work. Like, you'll never be able to get everything done. And I was sort of like, ha ha ha, I always get everything done. But no, in fact, like,
Get
you
it.
cannot get everything done. You cannot do everything. There will be things that sit on your to-do list for, a year and a half. Like I just sent a baby present to a baby that I think's like over age 1. So it's just, like you just can't do everything. I'm trying to remember exactly what my point was, but I feel like going to therapy is important because it's a moment to check in with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so much to do. And I spend so much of my time accomplishing things, achieving things, crossing things off my to-do list that at
Yeah.
the end of the day, if I'm not feeling good, like if I'm feeling kind of sad or off or dissatisfied, like I could very easily just never address it and just keep doing. So I think it's an important moment to take stock and check in and try to just dig a little bit deeper, especially for moms who I feel like often fall into that role of just
Achieving, doing, yeah.
achieving, doing, cleaning, organizing, communicating, and don't really look inward very much.
Right. Yeah. Therapy is so good for that. I mean, I remember just even my one most recent sessions, my therapist said, do you ever just stop to just, you know, feel really good about what you've achieved? And I said, wow, well, now that you say that, well, thank you. But it's hard. Sometimes it's really hard to do that for ourselves, to just really sit back and say, like, wow, look at what I've achieved in life. Even though you have so many goals and aspirations for things in the future, we need to take that time for ourselves. So thank you for being
Right.
open about that.
Yeah.
And children, I was just thinking this when you were talking about not getting everything done. I was thinking kids are, I mean, for me, they're my biggest teachers. Like they have taught me so much because I can't get things done exactly how I want to, or they aren't responding to me exactly how I want to, or, oh, I didn't read this in that parenting book, or my parents never told me it was this hard. Like we say this often to me and my husband,
Right.
but then we always come back to like, okay, this is, they're an individual person, a soul that is different. And each one of my kids is so different, but you have to parent them differently, which takes so much time to figure out. But that's like that is the greatest job, right? As mothers, to figure out who is this person and how do I need to be better and different for them. So
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, my 2 kids are they're very different. I mean, they get along well, but they have totally different personalities and their needs, are totally different.
yeah, I found like going into it, like my second son, I was like, oh, okay, so this is like going to school or preschool for him was really scary. And for my oldest, it was like fun because he's social. And then I have had to learn so much around, being shy and introverted and reserved, which isn't necessarily my personality, but I'm like learning so much about him and that type of personality. So yeah, they are really great teachers.
Yeah, and and they're not us. I mean, I think
Exactly.
sometimes like my older son, like I empathize with him so much. I see so much of myself
Mm.
in him, and yet I often have to remind myself like he's not a little you. He's his own person and he may not be experiencing it exactly the way you did.
Yeah.
And that you really do have to tune in and not assume you understand exactly what's going on.
Yeah, really good point. Which kind of leads me to my next question about what you feel like millennial moms are struggling with most and what they need to hear most today. Because I've kind of felt like we live in a day and age where parents are both like we're very much more egalitarian than our parents or baby boomers or whoever, and we're so educated. Like millennial moms are so educated now. We are educated on like the toxicity in our homes and products and this and that, and it
Mm-hmm.
can sometimes get really overwhelming because it's so much to know and do. And then I feel like, at least for me, I'm constantly worried that I'm always messing up or that I'm going to mess my kids up in the future. So I have to like remind myself, like, you're not going to do it perfectly. And that, there's so much grace that covers like our imperfections in parenting, and that we don't have to do it exactly
Mm-hmm.
right every time. And that I like to say the phrase, like, the kids are going to be all right. I just tell myself.
Yes.
So what, in your opinion, what do you see millennial moms struggling with?
Yeah, I think you hit on it, part of it at least. I think guilt and sort of there's definitely a decision fatigue issue that moms have, where we have so much information, we are so well educated, and we start to turn every decision into something that we have to research, and that becomes time consuming, and then we doubt it, and then we blame ourselves if we feel we made the wrong choice, when really we have no way of knowing if another choice would have been any better. If you
Right.
pick a summer camp and your kid hates it and then you beat yourself up that you picked the wrong one, well, like, they may have hated the other one too. It may just be your kid.
Yeah.
There, and maybe not every decision has to be so drawn out. Maybe you can just ask a trusted friend where their kids went to camp or where they went to nursery
No,
school,
did I lose you?
and choose that one, and be okay with however it turns out. I think it's really hard for our generation because we have so much information, we have so many choices, and it eats into all of our spare time, and it makes us feel bad too. So, I think the biggest struggles I think for millennial moms are this mental labor or the invisible labor, just how much there is to do. And even though relationships are more egalitarian, moms are still
Mhm.
shouldering most of that, but that at the same time we've invested so much into our educations and our careers, and we want to move forward, and it's just too much. You can't do everything, and so I think saying no, and it's not just saying no to a job. It's saying no, it's saying yes to the job, but saying no to certain responsibilities of the job or certain things that are asked of you at work, and it's saying no to your kids, like saying, I can't be, my son asked me to chaperone the field trip to the Central Park Zoo the other day.
Mhm.
And I just said, like, no, I'll be at a different one, but I can't do that one. I had 4 meetings scheduled that day, and I'm not making myself feel bad about it, because there are going to be kids in the class whose parents just couldn't chaperone,
Yeah.
And so this time it was my kid. So I think, it's just saying no across the board, to friends, to, I was supposed to bake something for a bake sale
Mhm.
on Sunday, and I just said, no, I can't,
Yeah.
but I'll drop off $20. So, I've just gotten used to saying no a lot more, but I think it's a big struggle. And then also not taking out that stress, on the people you love the most.
Yeah.
It's hard.
There is so much power and, um, just healing, I think, in saying no, because I know that from my past, like, I used to be a people pleaser and probably still am sometimes, but working through that. And I just felt like I had to say yes to
Hmm.
everything to be like the good mom, or to get the opportunities that I wanted. And now I'm really realizing that no is valuing myself, and that, yeah, you can't do it all and you don't have to. Yeah, same thing happened with me this week. I couldn't do the field trip. And so I wanted to, actually, but there wasn't enough spots on the field trip. So
I know. Well, right there, and then there are some moms who aren't working. I think
yeah,
it's hard. It's you just can't compare yourself. If you're a stay-at-home mom, you cannot compare yourself to a working mom. And
you
if
can't.
you're working, it's just a different life,
Yeah,
and there's not one is not better than the other.
yeah,
But my son will often be like, well, so and so's mom is there. She takes him to school and picks him up, and she was at this and that.
yeah,
And it's hard not to beat yourself up about that. But I think every woman has to listen to her own inner voice. And, when I was on maternity leave with my firstborn, like, there was a big part of me that was like, should I stay home? And then there was just this little nagging voice saying, like, no,
yeah.
go back to work. Like, you can take this career a lot further, and you're not done.
Oh, so
So,
good. I'm so glad you said that, because when you said that, I just thought, yeah, you can't, not one is better than the other, and there's just no judgment. And that's what I feel like a lot of us have to let down, is the judgment that we put on ourselves and others. If we see, like, so-and-so's mom's there all the time and volunteered in class. And it's like, they might not understand now at, 5, 6, 7, whatever, that mom works, but, they will learn that in the future. And then I feel like be happy and thankful that you showed them what it was like to be a person that followed her dreams and goals, and that you gave them that example. So
Yeah, it was funny. Like my 5-year-old, we were talking about the election. I mean, he has no concept of what's going on, but I was explaining that there's going to be a presidential election and we're going to vote for who's president. He goes, "Oh, are you running for president?" And it was just like, so he's like, I hope everyone votes for you. And I just thought it was so sweet that he, and then I explained to him that a woman has actually never been president, and he was in shock. Because he doesn't see, he has 2 parents who work, and I think my job is very intense, and I think he hears a lot more about my job than my husband's. So, I already see some of the benefits that his view of what women are capable of is different. He didn't ask my husband, "Are you running for president?" Right. He definitely sees women as leaders. So I do feel at least good about that.
Well, you are doing amazing. That's so good. I'm so happy to hear that. Oh, well, in closing, do you have anything you feel like my listeners would benefit from hearing, or just millennial moms in general? Like, what do we need to hear more of?
What do we need to hear more of? I mean, I think it's just be kind to yourself and know, this isn't a new thing, but that, you're the best parent for your kids. Mm-hmm. And that not only is there no such thing as a perfect parent, but an imperfect parent really is the perfect parent for your kid. If you did everything exactly by the book and you followed every piece of parenting advice to a T, it would be a very weird experience for your child. And you wouldn't really be tuning into your child or tuning into yourself. And it would create a very stressful environment for everyone. So, I think that's key, is just forgiveness, forgiving yourself and realizing that actually your mistakes in some way are beneficial to your family.
I love that. Well, thank you so much, Julia, for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was so fun.
Okay, I hope you guys got a lot out of that episode with Julia. She is just a powerhouse, but also she just came across so human to me, and I loved that, because I know if you're listening and you're a mom, you probably judge yourself all the time and worry if you are doing the best you can. And I just want to tell you right now that you are. If you're listening to this podcast, you're doing the best you can, and you're the perfect mom for your kids. So I just felt like someone needed to hear that today. And thank you again so much for listening. If you liked this episode or listen to this show often, please consider leaving us a review wherever you listen. It totally helps get the word out. Text the link to this show to someone that you think would benefit from it. And leave us a review. Thank you again so much. I'm sending you guys so much love, grace, and gratitude right now.